I'm Michael Behr. I'm the renewables reporter from Energy Voice, and I'm here with Dawid Hanak from the Net Zero Energy Centre. So we're here in Stockton-on-Tees. We're at the Wynyard House. We've just had our main session of the event. We were discussing, I think, how the energy transition is creating a big opportunity for the Teesside area. I mean, what were your kind of key takeaways from the event?
I think there is a quite substantial opportunity for the region in terms of being a lead or being seen as a global leader in decarbonisation. With the carbon capture projects and hydrogen projects going ahead that are first of a kind at the global scale, that's a really good opportunity to show the success stories, hopefully, that we'll see into the nearest future. It's an opportunity for industry to learn. It's an industry for people to get jobs for life, potentially.
You know, one of the things we were talking about was that I found really interesting was this kind of contrasting the UK's attitude compared with Germany's. Germany focusing on quite a few specific areas, the UK kind of opening things up to a much broader spectrum. And I think especially when we've got all these, as you say, first of a kind projects. Do you think that we might see a narrowing of that focus as, you know, there may be just the sort of survival of the fittest means that we start to focus on some technologies over others?
Well, I think it was a good approach to start broad and you learn how different technologies works. But at the end of the day, we would need to narrow down. Obviously, we would have a portfolio approach at the end of the day, but we would select the few technologies that work best for given scenario, be given sector. So what I'm saying as well is that each sector will look differently. So there is no one technology for all sectors.
I mean, I don't want to force you to get a crystal ball here, but if you said that, what do you see as the big opportunities for Teesside? What are the main sectors that are going to provide opportunities?
Well, obviously, the four sectors that will be the most important is in terms of the low carbon energy. It's the carbon capture, hydrogen, renewables, and nuclear. It's some of that elements of the infrastructure are already existing here. So we've got the pipelines, we've got nuclear site for kind of approved for nuclear operation. So bringing that technologies like hydrogen, CCS, and nuclear back into the Teesside will definitely help us advance towards the net zero targets.
And, you know, at the risk, I don't want to make everything too positive. Let's bring things down. What are some of the challenges that you see to rolling out these technologies?
I think the main challenge with hydrogen CCS, for example, is the fairly limited operation experience of those sites, because we only start implementing at the commercial scale. In the US, we had a couple of examples there. In the UK, we still need to implement commercial scale technology. So the main challenge is the limited experience. It's funding as well. Who is going to take the risk of if something goes wrong with the project, who's going to pay for it? So I think there is a significant role for both government and industry to come together and work together on the solution for that.
There was a lot of discussion, right? Who's going to be leading, who's going to be making decisions, and the role of government to support that. I mean, what are your perspectives on who needs to take the lead in developing these?
I think it's industry who needs to take the lead because they need to make investment decisions and business decisions to go ahead with a specific technology, but the government needs to work as a catalyst, so it shouldn't prevent them from doing implementation of those new technologies. It should support and encourage that new technologies. So I think it's at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way communication between government, industry, and potentially academia as well.
And we are also, I think talking about civil society, and I think that kind of gets into buy-in, and especially I think a big part of that is going to be getting people into the industry to provide the skills and expertise. And obviously that represents a big opportunity to create a local supply chain here in Teesside. I mean, what are your thoughts on how we're going to develop this sort of the skill base and make sure that it's an opportunity not just for the UK as a whole, but for Teesside?
So as a university, we do work with local colleges and local training providers to develop the skills roadmap, net zero skills roadmap. That would definitely look into how that skills need to grow from level 2, 3 onwards up to level 7, so that we provide that engineering, managerial, and operational skill labor force for the future. So I think it's all about getting industry, academia together, and government together to decide what skills would need to be implemented, would need to be available in the next 5, 10, and 20 years. Actually, we need to start looking ahead and kind of get our heads together to decide to implement those skills now, because 2030 is just 5 years ago. For now, sorry. Yeah.
Believe me, it's getting closer and closer. I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually passed. I mean, do you feel that in this sort of the nebulous discussions around the UK's energy transitions, our 2030 clean energy goals, all these different threads, building a local supply chain, from your perspective, is there an untold story that no one else has picked up on this, be it big or small? It doesn't have to be a big paradigm changing, but is there something perhaps that's gotten lost in the noise in the discussion?
Well, I think we've got very good experience in terms of offshore wind, and that capacity is growing. And I think what people forget is that the Dogger Bank will be one of the biggest or the biggest wind farm in Europe, or potentially in the world as well. So I think talking about the successes like the Dogger Bank wind farm, which is a couple of gigawatts of clean energy, needs to be kind of made. We need to make people more aware of those technologies, but also people need to start understanding their carbon footprint, right? So we know we have to transition to net zero. We know we have to decarbonize our energy grid, but it's down to our decisions, down to our behavior, how we decide whether we go for a low carbon energy supplier or whether we carry on with normal supplier, how that influences the total greenhouse gas emissions.
Good. And, being that we've just had an E-FWD event, we're really pushing the idea of how are we going to move forward discussions around the energy transition. How do you feel that this event will have moved things forward? Do you think this is the start of a big paradigm shift, or, is it going to be that we've still got a lot of work to put in?
Well, I think we do have lots of work to put in, but talking about what's next and kind of prioritizing implementation as what was the main outcome of the discussion actually may shift things a little bit. We had quite a lot of people from industry in the room who listened to what needs to happen next, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges for businesses and government, and I hope that they will make their decisions accordingly based on what we discussed today.
Good. Well, I think, thank you, Dawid. Thank you very much for your time. And don't forget to check E-FWD and Energy Voice for all the latest news from the UK energy industry.